Welcome back to Civil Wars. I'm William Spaniel, and this lecture is on bargaining and lawsuits. You might be thinking to yourself, what does a lawsuit have to do with civil wars? And if you're one of those people, that's fine, but please hold any reservations you might have until the end of the lecture, by which point, hopefully, the analogy will be clear. In any case, we are now transitioning to our discussion on bargaining and warfare, and these are the subjects of my textbook, The Rationality of War. You can learn more about this in the video description. There'll be a link to Amazon where you can purchase the book if you would like to. The lectures that we'll be doing coming up, though, are based off of chapters from this book, and actually this lecture right now is based off of the preface of that book. And the analogy works something like this. Suppose that you're a store owner, and one of your customers falls down and sues you for negligence. He's blaming you for the fall. Your lawyer and his lawyer agree on some basic facts about the case. First, there is a 60% chance that the lawsuit will be successful. Second, if he wins, you'll have to pay him $40,000. Essentially, $40,000 is the value of the lawsuit. And third, going to court is very expensive. It's going to cost each of you $10,000 in lawyer's fees. You'll have to pay your lawyer $10,000. He'll have to pay his lawyer $10,000 if you go to court. Broadly speaking, there are three possible resolutions to this issue. First, you could go to court and say, hey, judge, what do you think? And let the court decide the matter. Second, one of you could concede immediately. You could say, you know what, you're right, I'm going to pay you off. Or he could say, you know what, I don't care about this case anymore, I'm going to drop it. And lastly, you two could reach some sort of out-of-court settlement where you agree to pay him some money and he, in return, agrees to drop the case. What I'd like you to do now is to think about which outcome should we expect. Should we expect the first outcome, the second outcome, or the third outcome, and why? And similarly, why should we not expect these other outcomes? What makes these other outcomes particularly silly, and what makes that outcome that we should expect to happen the reasonable outcome? So go ahead and pause this lecture now and think about that, and post a comment in the comments section if you have a good answer. And now that you've hopefully done that, let's think about this. Let's go through each of these possible resolutions one by one, starting with what happens if we let the court decide the matter. Well, we can calculate what happens if we go to court. For him, he has a 60% chance of winning and a $10,000 of going to trial. So if we do the math there, 60% of the time he wins $40,000, 40% of the time he wins nothing, and he pays $10,000 regardless. So if we do all of the addition, we see that he expects to receive $14,000 if he goes to court. As for you, there's a 40% chance that you win, but regardless of whether you win or lose, you have to pay $10,000 to your attorney. So that means 60% of the time you lose $40,000. 40% of the time you lose nothing because you win the case and you don't have to pay him anything. And regardless of the outcome, you have to pay your lawyer $10,000. So in expectation, if you go to trial, you expect to lose $34,000. That's a combination of how much you'll have to pay him and how much you'll have to pay your lawyer. So that's what happens if we go to court. What happens if we don't go to court? What happens if one of us concedes immediately? Well, if he concedes, he's not going to be receiving any money. He's dropping the lawsuit. But note, that's worse for him than going to court and taking $14,000 in expectation. So it would be kind of crazy if he were to concede the case immediately, because going to court is profitable for him. Similarly, for you, if you concede, you're going to have to pay him $40,000. So while going to trial isn't profitable for you, it's less unprofitable, because if you go to court, you expect to lose only $34,000. So it would also be crazy for you to drop the lawsuit, or to say I concede this lawsuit immediately, because you'll be paying more money than you would expect to pay if you actually went to trial. So it would be very weird if someone conceded the lawsuit. The last possible outcome is that we reach a bargain resolution. If neither one of us is conceding, the only other resolution is that we bargain over the outcome. We reach a settlement. So let's let X be a possible settlement offer. X is the amount of money that you'll have to pay to him to drop the lawsuit. Recall that he gets $14,000 in expectation if he goes to trial, which means he's better off accepting a settlement offer if that settlement offer X is going to pay him more than $14,000. Similarly for you, recalling that X is how much you have to pay, you want to minimize the size of X that you have to pay. If you go to trial, you'll expect to have to pay $34,000. So if you pay a settlement offer of less than $34,000, you're happier with that settlement than if you go to court. So you're better off accepting a settlement offer X if X is less than $34,000. Now, if you combine those inequalities from bullet points 2 and 3, you'll see that an X is a mutually preferable settlement offer if $14,000 is less than X and X is less than $34,000. So if the settlement is between $14,000 and $34,000, both of you are better off than if you went to court. So what we should be concluding here is that it would be very weird if the issue actually went to trial. And the reason for that is that both of you are better off with an out-of-court settlement somewhere between $14,000 and $34,000. It would be nuts if you guys went to trial instead of just saying, hey, you know what? I'm at fault as the owner of this store, but I'm not going to be paying you fully because I don't think I'm fully at fault. Some of it's your fault. So I'm just going to write you a check for $20,000 instead. That leaves both of you better off. So it would be nuts if you actually went to trial and had to waste all of that money on attorney's fees. And in fact, that's exactly what we see in reality. In reality, about 95% of cases are settled out of court. That is a vast majority of cases not actually going to trial and having a ruling being placed on the case. In reality, most people are able to understand that going to court is costly and it's risky, and so they reach one of these bargain resolutions that leaves them both better off. Now, here's the kicker. This is actually very similar to war. Trials and war are very similar in the sense that they are both costly. In the trial case, it was because of your attorney's fees. In war, it's because of death and destruction. Both of these, both trials and war, have some chance of being won or lost. And in trial, that means getting your money or not getting your money. In war, that means getting your war aims or not getting your war aims. And both trials and war are negotiated over. With trials, it's lawyers communicating offers to settle out of court. With war, it's diplomats saying, you know what, let's not go to war. Let's try to settle this by agreeing to some terms of a peace treaty instead. So the ultimate question then is, why don't we settle wars as well? If we're able to settle trials out of court, why can't we settle wars off of the battlefield? And that's what we're going to be exploring in the next few lectures. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Take care.